Thank you. Thank you. Before we get started with my presentation, we actually have a special announcement. We have had the Pitch It at LendIt. This is our third annual Pitch It at LendIt here in the US. We've had it going on stage all morning, and the judges have selected a winner, and we are going to award the Pitch It trophy right now. So the 2017 winner of Pitch It at LendIt is Nova. Can you guys come up on stage to that side over there. See, we had 262 entries for Pitch It, and then we whittled it down to 20 finalists and then 8 pitches, and that's been going on there today. And I want to bring out, while Nova are coming up, I'm going to bring out my partner, Bo Bruskern, who's going to announce the Audience Choice winner.
Hi, everybody. Glad to see you all back here today. I am delighted to announce that the Audience Choice for the Pitch It at LendIt competition also goes to Nova.
So, hopefully they're coming up.
Yep.
Yeah, so the audience was able to vote on the prizes, on the best company they did, and so it was funny, the audience and the judges, first time this has happened, voted for the same company. So come on out, guys.
Please. We get a trophy for each of you.
Congratulations.
Great.
Congratulations. One for you.
Well done.
We actually just got a photo. Okay. So what I'm going to do here, I do this every year. I take us through a little bit of an overview of the industry, what's happened in the last year, what the major companies, the origination numbers, and that kind of thing. So as we've heard from several speakers, this is all about marketplace lending specifically. Well, we've heard from several speakers that it was a tough year last year. We had the Lending Club challenges, but even before that, it was a tough year. But Lending Club clearly was the biggest story of the year. It's the biggest story in the history of the marketplace lending industry. But it wasn't the only story. We also had the Fintech Charter, the OCC. We had Thomas Curry up here yesterday defending some of the critics of the OCC Fintech Charter. Looks like we're going to see that coming very soon. And we also had up here today Goldman Sachs, and I put them down here as one of the biggest news stories. So I think it's important to really note that this was a strange move on the surface. That Goldman Sachs is an investment bank. They've been around forever. They've never had any consumer-facing business whatsoever, let alone an online lending operation. But what they saw is an opportunity with something that I've seen and I've believed for a long time is that the online lending space has tremendous potential. They saw it as well, and they launched a business. And we heard from Harriet earlier that it's very early days, but they are clearly very committed to their business there. We also had the first platform failures. This was, frankly, I thought there'd be more, but there was a handful last year, and I think we'll see some more of that this year. But that's certainly something that I think we should note about and not gloss over. A positive news story was the securitization market. We had Ram Ahluwalia up here yesterday from PeerIQ talking about that. That has been a real growth story and a real positive story. Throughout all the challenges of 2016, the securitization market was a growth place. It helped really, I think, many of the platforms maintain the amount of volume that they did. We also had industry associations. We've had the Marketplace Lending Association launch. We've had the OLPI who are here. There was an announcement yesterday. I'm going to get these names wrong, but the Online Lending Platform Alliance Association, Innovative Lending Platform Association. Anyway, there were two associations. You can read about it on LendIt News. We had 2 associations that amalgamated yesterday. And there's several others. We got the Responsible Business Lending Coalition. They're another one. These are all important initiatives that are really helping us have a voice in Washington. We heard from a legislator and 2 regulators yesterday, all encouraging us to speak out in Washington, to take more of an active role. These associations are really going to help do that. So let's move over to the UK. This is a global overview, after all. So in the UK, we had the Brexit story, which really hasn't had much impact yet. But the impact it has had, it's created uncertainty inside the UK and certainly inside many of the online lending platforms in the UK, as they have a large percentage of their employees from outside the UK. So there's a lot of uncertainty there. The FCA, which is the financial regulator in the UK, started a regulatory review of peer-to-peer lending. That is something that was expected. They started the regulatory regime in 2014, and they said in a couple of years they'll do a review. They're in the process of doing that now. It looks like they're going to make some changes, which we don't know exactly what they're going to be yet, but that will be announced later this year. They have the Innovative Finance ISA that was launched. An ISA is the UK equivalent of an IRA. It's similar, except it's a lot less flexible, whereas in an IRA, here in the US, you can hold pretty much any asset in your IRA, if you have a self-directed IRA, that is. In the UK, that's not the case. They had this Innovative Finance ISA that was specifically created for the peer-to-peer lending space. It's starting to get some momentum. There's been several companies that have started to offer it. But the big three are still waiting and waiting. They've promised it by April of 2016. It is now March, and they still have not been approved. And I know that's causing a little bit of concern there. We have Zopa announced that they were pursuing a banking license. A lot of people think that's a terrible thing. I think it's a great thing. I think this industry is... the future of this industry, I think, is in closer partnerships with banks and a blurring of the lines, I think, between banking and online lending. Zopa have seen that they want to be able to take deposits and offer bank-like products, and they're going to be doing that. They're going to be going through the process of registering now. And then we had at LendIt Europe last year. I put this in because Lord Turner, he used to run the precursor of the FCA in the UK, and he was quoted a bit over a year ago as being, it was a misquote in reality, but he was quoted as basically saying that the peer-to-peer lending platform is going to make the bankers in 2008 look like geniuses. It was a misquote. He came to LendIt Europe and clarified it. And since then, there's been no stories about how negative Lord Turner is on the industry. Whereas I would say every week last year, until LendIt Europe, there was a story that quoted Lord Turner's comments. So it was really, I think, important for the UK industry to get that clarified. Let's move over to China. China is by far the largest market in the world, and by far, I think, the most important market in the world. That's why LendIt actually has an event there every year. We've really, from the very first LendIt, when we met people from China, we have had a close relationship with the Chinese industry there. The Chinese banking regulator, the CBRC, finally announced the regulation of online lending in China. That they spent several years analysing it. They're reasonably strict regulations. A lot of people didn't like it, but the reality is China desperately needed a regulatory system, and now they have it, and I think that's a really good thing. And the reality is that China, there's more money in China, I think, than the rest of the world combined. It seems sometimes, anyway, when it comes to this industry and fintech investment in general. They are clearly the world leaders. Now, we are seeing more and more American companies now go to China when they're raising capital. China has a lot of money to invest, and many platforms that are at LendIt today have been or in the process of going to China to raise money. As I said, it's the largest market in the world. This is the $2 trillion RMB. That's 300 billion US dollars. That you can add every other platform in the world together, and it wouldn't even come close to half that number. So that's how big China is. That's how important it is. Those numbers come courtesy of Wangdai Zhizhao, which wdzj.com. They're a website in China that really amalgamates all this information. They also shared that the number of peer-to-peer lending platforms for the first time ever dropped to 2,448. Again, vastly more than the rest of the world combined. Now, that number is going to go down. I expect that will keep going down every year for many years because the new regulations in place are going to make it harder and harder for the fringe platforms to survive. We also don't want to gloss over the fact that China had some scandals last year, that there's been some investor money that's been lost. We need to, and I think the regulations are going to help with that, but it's something that I think China needs to work on, and I'm hoping with, now that they have this new regime in place, or the new regulatory rules, that we will see far less of that. So now let's get to the numbers. There's three sectors here that I'm going to focus on. We have consumer, small business, and real estate. In consumer, and again, these slides are all going to be available on the LendIt website. Feel free to take a photo if you want, that's fine, but they will be on the LendIt website by the end of the week. These are the numbers for 2016. Lending Club leads the way substantially, $8.7 billion. Scott Sanborn said in his presentation yesterday it was $8 billion. They don't break down their small business and their students, so I imagine some of that 8.7 is small business and student. Small business and auto. It's only a small portion, but clearly they were well over $8 billion in personal loans last year. Discover is the second largest. So far, this is my estimate, just based on my own research. They don't break down their numbers. They said they did $8 billion in loans last year. That was shared publicly. My estimate is they did around 3.2 of actual personal loans, which places them at number 3. Lightstream, which is owned by SunTrust Banks, they are another online lender, did $2.3 billion, and we have Prosper, who everybody knows, coming in at $2.2 billion, for a total of about $20.4 billion just for the top 5 players in consumer. In small business, it's a little bit different. We have OnDeck at $2.4 billion. That's publicly available information. PayPal Working Capital, 1.5, that's an estimate. I worked with Sean Murray from DeBank to calculate some of these numbers. Cabbage at 1.25 billion. Can Capital, again, this is an estimate. We haven't got any information out of Can Capital, but that's what we believe they did before they had their challenges late last year. And again, Square Capital, publicly available information. They are the 5th largest online lender when it comes to small business. Real estate, SoFi leads the way here again. They are, again, this is my estimate, based on reading the tea leaves and doing research, 1.6 billion. Now, SoFi offers, these are not fix and flip, which is pretty much everybody else on this list. This is 30-year fixed loans at 7-year arms. These are owner-occupied residential loans, jumbo loans for the most part. That 1.6 billion would not have been that many loans, because you can get a $2 million loan with SoFi. You can do it on your phone, actually, and that's where they're focused on, the jumbo loans to the millennials. Lending Home, again, this is my estimate based on what publicly available information. They wouldn't share with me the exact number. I think it's around 700 million. They're clearly number 2 in the space. Then we have Realty Shares at number 3, Share States at number 4, and Share States are a fairly new company. They've been growing very rapidly. And Pier Street at number 5 for around $2.9 billion in total volume. So we move across to the UK. So these numbers don't look as impressive as they probably should. When I was doing this slide from last year, I noticed that I had an exchange rate of $1.52. It's now $1.25, and we all know about the reasons for that. But the reality is, it's still, and Funding Circle is leading the way in the UK with over $1 billion US. And you can see the big 3 there, Funding Circle, Zopa, and RateSetter are the clear leaders, and we have LendInvest and Market Invoice rounding out the top 5. China, I was going to put the China numbers in, but I looked at several different sources, and they weren't able to match exactly. So it's just difficult to know exactly what the numbers are on these platforms. But I can tell you these are clearly the top platforms in China. Lufax is a behemoth. They are the largest platform in the world by far. They're actually moving away from peer-to-peer lending. They're talking about going public. It'll probably be the world's largest IPO this year. If they go public this year, it'll probably be the world's largest IPO. They are doing extremely well. Only been around for about 5 or 6 years, but doing extremely well. CreditEase, who have a booth here with Yerendai, they're also doing well. Dianrong are also here. And we have Waydai, Neo Capital are here, and we have several others rounding out what we consider to be the top 10. This is not a definitive list, so if someone comes up to me and says, you know, my company should have been on there, I'm saying, well, this is our best estimate, and I apologize if I miss a company's out here. So let's look ahead to 2017. I feel like the good news is, you know, we have bounced back as an industry. I feel like 2016 could have been a lot worse. And I feel like that's a testament to many of the companies in the space working very, very hard. But the difference being is that now I feel like there's a focus on profitability that wasn't there before. Companies now realize it is not easy to raise a Series B or a Series C or even a Series A. It's, you know, the easy money has left the industry long ago, and the only way for companies to really control their destiny is to focus on profitability. And part of the problems of last year, we realized that while the tech is important, and oftentimes we really focus on the tech, and here at LendIt, we certainly focus on the tech, but if you don't do the financial part, then you can get yourself in trouble. The financial part is more important than the tech, because if you get that wrong, you can be out of business very, very quickly. And this is not news to anybody, but I feel like I need to put it here because I think 2017 is important when it comes to this, and that is the role of banks. I think banks are going to become ever more important. You know, we have every one of the top 10 banks in this country is here at this event, and that wasn't the case last year or the year before. And what we're finding is that banks have moved from saying, oh yeah, I might come to LendIt just to check it out, to okay, we've really got to we've got to really get a future strategy worked out when it comes to fintech. We can't just have a wait and see approach anymore. So they're here to learn, and they're here to actually create a strategy. And the reality is, 2017, there is going to be more failures. I think there'll be some mergers and acquisitions. I think there will be some large platforms that we all know that will probably get acquired this year or will merge with others. I think you're going to see a consolidation, and I think there will always be new innovative platforms coming up. We saw that with Pitch It. We had 262 entries, as I said. You know, there's going to be new companies coming up, but I think at the companies that are already well established, I think you're going to see more and more consolidation there. And I think we're also going to see much more investment from China. That is going to become more and more important. I think China is going to be, if you're a US platform and you're thinking about raising money and you're not going to China, I think you need to have a hard look at yourself, because China should be part of everybody's strategy. I feel like the Chinese are willing. You see, we have over 100 people from China who've made the trip to come here. They are wanting to do business with the US, and I think you'll find a positive reception there, and I expect we will see more investment in China from this time forward. So I'm going to leave you with some thoughts from Warren Buffett. I don't know how much he knows about this industry, and this is just a quote that I stumbled across the other day, which really struck me as being relevant, particularly at this point in time. If past history was all that is needed to play the game of money, the richest people would be librarians. And I feel like that is appropriate today because on several levels, I think the past history that we've had in this industry, we've certainly had some challenges, and I think we all need to learn from what was happening. And I think there's been that theme throughout this event, is that we are taking lessons away from 2016, and I feel like we are moving ahead as an industry. And I also think that, you know, when we're looking at creating credit models, and there's been lots of talk of artificial intelligence. There's been artificial intelligence here. We had Watson up here earlier today. You go to the credit and underwriting room, it's being repeated many times. Small business lending. Throughout this conference, there's a talk about artificial intelligence, which is really focusing on the future. And I think we've moved away from focusing on the past when it comes to credit data, and when it comes to, I think, helping make underwriting decisions. We have very much more, we've changed our tack here, and I think that's a good thing. Okay, so thank you very much.